what are we going to talk about today? Can you see my second slide?
Yes.
Yes, good. We're going to start with a quiz. Then we're going to think about attitudes to time by type, and then introduce the concept of emotional intelligence and lateness, which is basically the theme here. So within that context, how does lateness impact ourselves and others? Now, we might be looking at this as a coach rather than a personal, but there's always two aspects of this. And then talking about if and how we can change, and that's going to be the breakout. After that, we're going to look at sort of the useful stuff, which is, well, what causes lateness? And this comes out of the research I did before I published my book in 2020, which seems to be an original take on understanding what causes lateness and how we can overcome our lateness. So I hope you get some takeaways from that. So the quiz, I hope you've already started it. That would be brilliant. I'm just going to show that page. You'll have to speak to me because I can't see you. Has everybody been answering it, or are there some people who are seeing this page for the first time?
On it.
Pardon?
I'm answering it. Yeah, I'm answering it right now.
I need you to tell me when I can go to the next chart page. Can I move on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody happy?
Yeah.
Do you want us to do the quiz? Is that...
Yes,
Yes.
I'm asking you to choose A, B, or C from your own point of view. Just make a note of your own answers. Sorry, I didn't explain that, did I?
Some very clear patterns emerging, I'm imagining here.
So perhaps you can help me know when I can move to the next slide.
Yeah, probably just another moment, then we'll move on.
Okay, everybody. Okay, so now all you need to do is see what the predominance is of A's and C's, because the B's are the neutral answers. And what we're really looking to do here is push you to either extreme. So I'm guessing
Question here. I've just got a question in the chat. What happens if somebody is equally split between two?
Right. Well, that's where I'm guessing they're not going to be 50% A's and C's. They're going to be B's and either A's and C's. So I'd like you to go to your A's and your C's and ignore your B's. Because if you're mostly B's, I'll start by saying you don't have a problem being on time, but you can be frustrated with other people's behaviour. And that's, I guess, why you're here, because you're going to be either living with, managing, or helping other people with the problem. So we're going to concentrate on mostly A's. And if you are, so Vivian, is anybody mostly A's? If you could put your hands up. Viv?
Some people have got their cameras off, so hard to see. There's definitely one person, thanks Isabel, that's got a hand up.
Excellent. Okay, well that's lovely as well. Thank you. So I'm guessing that you would. So I'm just suggesting you plan your time carefully. You dislike being put under pressure. You enjoy getting tasks completed and put away. You value punctuality highly, and you see lateness as a failing. So we're going to move to the C's now. So mostly C's. Let's start by saying you always aim to arrive on time and you hate being late. But you rarely arrive 10 minutes early unless you have an important appointment. And you believe that you get an awful lot more done at the last minute than the people who are always early. So let's put this into a bit of an MBTI context and say, so we're looking particularly at the JP axis and looking at what wraps around this lateness issue. So as people with judging preference, you like to make quick decisions, even if they have to be changed later. You want things, whereas if we go to the other side, people with a perceiving preference, they want to gather as much information as possible before making decisions. You want things in the outer world to be settled and decided if you are J, whereas you don't, you're the opposite. You want flexibility, spontaneity, and keep things open and consider all options. If you're a P, if you're a J, you're organized, methodical, and you like routine. If you're a P, you dislike routine and you fear boredom more than a lot of other things. If you're a J, you like to get things done efficiently according to a schedule. If you're P, you like the flexibility and you don't like set plans. If you're J, you see time as rigid. I'll turn that in a minute. And P, you see time as elastic. So if we were to sort of try and just get some overall theme to that, J's are seeking closure, P's are resisting closure. And I'd like to credit Sue Blair with just do it for a J. And I think it's Catherine who, in fact, well, certainly showed me P for put it off. So if we take that, what I'd like to do, as I said, we're leaving out the neutral middle of this, of the bell curve that we're all on, and we're looking at more extreme behaviour. And so for the pronounced preference for P, and I say that with care because it's not quite as simple as that in the way proper analysis, but nevertheless, there are people who are very clearly at one end of the J spectrum, and I'm calling those the timekeepers, and on the right, the people with the P, I'm calling them the time benders. And there's a particular reason for that, which is words around time tend to be very judgmental, and it's much more than just that behavior. It wraps around with a lot of other behaviors. So that's my reason for not using the word late or even the word early. So we talked about JC time as rigid. Another way of looking at it, which I found extremely useful, was a J gets 10% of the work done in 10% of the time available. Very straightforward. A P, on the other hand, sees time as elastic. And the classic scenario is we do, and I'll say I'm ENFP, we do 80% of the work done in the last 20% of the time. And that is a fundamental difference and really, really worth being aware of if you are, as I say, managing or living with or coaching people at these ends of the spectrum. So J's are more like, and as a result, J's are more likely to be early and P's are more likely to be late. So it is a shorthand. There's a lot of subtlety if you want to go into it, but I'm just trying to put some big picture down about what's going on here. So we've taken those names, timekeeper and timebender, and just a couple of illustrations to show how fundamentally different that attitude, that preference is. And once you start being aware of it, you can spot, well, any meeting you go to, if you are the presenter and you're there first, you will see people coming in early, and you will see people coming in with good time, and then you'll see people coming in just at the deadline or possibly a few minutes after. And it will be the same people that do that every time. It's pretty much an innate behaviour, and it links to MBTI. So if we introduce the emotional intelligence, again, Catherine Stottart's chart here So EI, the ability to understand and manage your own emotions while recognizing and influencing the emotions of others. And we're going to look at that, at lateness, through that perspective. So self-awareness and awareness of others. And Catherine will use that chart in a different way, but that's really what we're looking at for here now. So I would like just to, as I say, based on the book and the work I did, just talk a little bit about what that is if you are one side or the other. So I'm going to start with the timekeepers, the early birds. What is going on in a timekeeper who wants to be early, and not just 5 or 10 minutes early, but can be 20 or 30 minutes early? And what we've got there is actually a huge anxiety, an irrational fear about being late. And I've got a few quotes there you can read. So the irrational fear pushes people to be late, to be early, because they're in fact imagining all the things that can go wrong. And that last quote, you know, I'm thinking if I've got to choose between letting my resume fall on the metro tracks or me, well, I'll let my. I mean, you know, these are real disaster movie scenarios, so they have a very active imagination, and there's, as I say, it's an irrational fear. So in terms of impact on self, you've got anxiety. If you're a timekeeper, impact on others, you're actually very anxious to avoid keeping people waiting. Sorry, did somebody say something? No. And so you're very mindful of your impact on others. But that doesn't mean to say you don't have any impact at all, because if you are in charge of other people, as a parent, for example, other people have to fit in with your anxiety. And of course, if you're in an organization, your aim is to create impact on others, because organizations tend to be run on timekeeping principles. Now let's look at time benders. The situation is completely the opposite. In terms of time benders impact on self. Time benders seldom experience the consequence of their lateness. Time benders do not see themselves as late as much as anybody else does, because in their minds they say, okay, I can be on time when it matters. So if you've got a flight or a job interview, you know, your life isn't out of control. I think when we talk ADHD, you're talking about people with lives out of control. But we're not going that far. We're talking about neurotypical people. So if it's an unusual event, then we can be on time. If it's a regular event, this is where we start pushing the boundaries, leaving less and less time to get there before it starts, which, needless to say, means that we don't always make it. And if the class doesn't start till you arrive, in our minds, we were on time. That doesn't mean to say if you were waiting for us, you saw it that way. Other people don't point out the truth, especially us British. And so we tend not to experience our lateness, other people. We're not thinking about being late. We're thinking about arriving on time. Right, I think I've just, yeah, okay. In terms of our impact on others, as I said, it's the opposite of being a timekeeper, because other people have a big impact from our behaviour, mainly because they assume we are in control of our lateness, and therefore we're doing it on purpose, and quite rightly feel very angry. And again, please read. They may not say to our faces how they're feeling, but they certainly will communicate it on an awful lot of chats and discussion groups. So people feel very, as you see, people feel that it's impacting them, and the key to it, you value your own time more than the time of the person waiting for you. That's how people who are early see people who are late. interestingly, people who are late have no idea that that's what they're being seen as. So, Viv, I'm going to ask you to take over at this point. So we're going to do some breakout groups, and these are the questions, which are also on the handout sheet if you've got it in front of you, because I'm afraid this picture will disappear once you're in the breakout.
We got only to the first one.
Okay, so how punctual are you? Well, should we perhaps ask the Jays then to give us what they feel they can share with us, and then we will limit the time we're offering to the Ps to add their thoughts. Do you have a spokesperson, J Group?
No.
Would anybody like? Well, would between you, would you like to share your thoughts?
Who was in my group?
I can see Manjula and Lynn
Oh,
and Isabel.
We didn't get very far either.
yeah,
No,
we did
you need to know
discuss
it.
how we thought, well, I certainly being the one who was split down the middle between Bs and Cs, I thought to what extent is this the learned behavior that we're seeing finally? Because I recognize myself more as a P in my younger years and more of a J now. And then we also got onto we didn't get to whether we wanted to change or the obstacles, but we did get on to talking about norms and how they're culturally different, because in sort of psychometrics in occupational assessment, I would ensure that I was comparing apples with apples, and that those norms would be from a British population. And so I wondered to what extent, and Lynn was talking, how she needed to keep that in mind with cultural differences as well.
Thank you. What about any other J's? Would anybody else like to add to that?
I just noted that now that I've encountered the third age of life, my J, which used to be almost manic, is much more less chilled, and I haven't deliberately changed it. It's just I think life shows you that it is actually that you're not going to die if you don't get somewhere on time, and most of the time. So I think it's just being more generally chilled.
Which is the benefit of getting towards the end of the life cycle, as we could call it, I suppose.
One of the many benefits of, yes, bit of life wisdom.
Thank you. Just to say on the cultural differences, so right and so changeable, but even within each cultural difference, there is still a spectrum, even though, as you say, I mean, in Germany, the first person at the meeting is the presenter. You go to the Middle East, time is a power issue, and perhaps even more importantly, it's rude to look at your watch. So the concept of lateness is very different as well. There's a great spread, but nevertheless, within that, the personality types do appear to be consistent. Thank you. What did the Ps have time to elect a spokesperson? No. Would
I'm
Sydney,
happy to jump in if.
yeah, please. Well,
Yeah.
but between you guys, you can.
Yeah, so we were with the EP group, and we don't really like kind of wasting time by hanging around. So we tend to fit like more stuff in than perhaps there's always time for. But we discovered we were all on time for getting trains and planes, and if we were leading something, we were on time. It was more stuff that was kind of routine where we were like just bang on time, like which was interesting, or slightly late. And we just started a kind of interesting discussion about the sort of 2 surges of energy you get on a project as a P, both at the start, right at the start when you're initiating something, and towards the end. And actually using that initial surge of energy is quite helpful. And we were talking about being organized as Ps rather than organized as Js, because it's not really that we're disorganized. It's just that we're different.
Thank you. Thank you very much for ticking lots of boxes. Thank you for mentioning the surge of energy at the beginning. That is something I've made a note of, because one of the things I talk about particularly is the importance, the role that deadlines play for Ps, which are very important. But as you say, there's 2 sides to that. In order to just draw this on, and given the time, if it's all right with you, I'm going to keep moving through the charts, because this is just giving some structure to hopefully what you feel you've been saying. If not, we will take questions at the end if there's more time. So do make a note if you don't agree with anything. But writing my book, as I said, it's very obvious who are the people who I'm calling time benders. But assuming that I could get all those very important case study notes that you can get, that you need for these how-to books, I was really surprised to find that no people with a strong preference for lateness were aware or could give me the stories. All the stories came from the Js who had experienced the lateness, because if we're late, we tend to be in denial. We tend not to see that, and I want to explore that a bit more. And as we've seen, early people commonly assume that lateness is deliberate. Therefore, a better understanding of the causes of lateness will hopefully, using emotional intelligence, help both sides to become more self-aware and more aware of the impact on others. So why are time benders in denial? First of all, we intend to be punctual, and we just don't allow time for things to go wrong on the journey or whatever preparation we're making. And on that journey, it's the adrenaline that's driving us. So the adrenaline rush doesn't allow us quiet contemplation to consider the people who are waiting for us. We're just thinking, oh, can I get through those red lights? Can I catch that train? Can I walk a bit faster? Can I pack my bag quicker? And we're completely focused on our side of things, not on the people who are waiting for us. And we're always hoping to arrive on time until we find we're late. And because we very rarely wait for others ourselves, unless, as you've said, unless it's an important reason for being there, we can be on time when it matters. We just don't really spend a lot of time thinking about the impact of our lateness on other people. So we tend to fail or blank out the times when we were late, but remember the times we were early. And that statement, I can be on time when it matters, which P's say so easily, fail to realize what impact that has on the people we're saying it to. If it's our family and our friends, they're hearing, so I don't matter. And that's not the case. So what's going on there? So I'd like to introduce you to our secret scale of acceptable lateness, because time benders have more control over their lateness than they care to admit. So there are things that we know we must be early for, things with consequences, job interviews, court appearances, check-ins. If you miss those, you will miss something really important. So you will absolutely prioritize the time. We know we must be on time for, well, whatever the job is. If it's a job that needs to, if you're a teacher, you will be on time for your class. If you're getting your kids to school, hopefully, or client meetings, no question about it, you'll be on time. Usually on time for exercise class, whatever, the less important things we do. We can be late for drinks with friends, visiting family, lunch parties. And there are things with our great relief we need to be late for, certainly in certain cultures, such as, well, dinner parties, for example. Though I will say in France, talking about cultural differences, in France you can be late for a business meeting, but you cannot be late for dinner. So why are we late? because we don't intend to be late. So what's happening? There is this subconscious resistance to being early. It takes some time to actually acknowledge that, but we can say we're going to be on time. We're absolutely convinced I'm going to leave early. I'm going to get there early. What do? Just before we leave, we squeeze in one more task. So I'll just empty the dishwasher. I'll just water the plants. I'll just check my messages. Leaving the door early is very difficult. And that's where I would relate to that closure. Closure avoidance literally can relate to actually closing the door. And I don't think any of us would recognize that feeling. But the more I look at it, the more I have to acknowledge that that's what's going on subconsciously. We don't like to close things down. We like to keep our options open. So closing things down is difficult, and we can get stuck in what we're doing, which also relates to the fact that for some reason we have a blindness about the time it takes us to stop doing one thing and start doing another. So it's the transition time between tasks that is very often a killer. We literally think, oh, I've got to go out, you know, my deadline is I've got to leave at 8:30. I'll stop working at 8:30. No, we've got to go and get the water from the fridge, make sure we've got the phone, find the keys, maybe change our shoes, lock the door, go out to the car or whatever, open the car. Sometimes one of my examples is somebody who lives in a block of flats, and when she actually measured it, it took her something like 7 minutes to get from her front door to her car. But she said, no wonder I'm always late, because I don't allow that time. It's a blind spot. It's one of the reasons we're late. Another one is we're not good at measuring time. Now, there has been some research that demonstrates this, but it can be explained logically in that because we said time varies for us. We can do 80% of the work in 20% of the time. We don't know how long things take us. If we've got a deadline, if you can imagine you're not dressed yet and you suddenly realize you're supposed to be out of the house in 15 minutes, you can get dressed very quickly. You can get ready very quickly. If you haven't got a deadline, it can take you all morning. So how long does it take? Very, very, very difficult for us to actually measure objectively how long anything takes. If you're a J, it's no problem at all, because 10% of the work takes 10% of the time. We are total optimists because we don't expect anything to go wrong, and that includes the lights being red, the learner driver in front of us, the finding a parking space. You know, very obvious things. And again, one of the weird things is if we've once done a journey in 10 minutes, it's very hard to see it as anything longer than a 10-minute journey, even though that happened to be because all the lights were on green and the parking space was just waiting for us. So it all comes down to deadlines, but deadlines, we cannot make a deadline up. We cannot just say, I will get ready at 10:02, even though that's 20 minutes early. It has to be a real deadline and have consequences for us to get that adrenaline buzz that gets us moving. And I hope the people who have to wait for us are aware of all the things I'm telling them, but that will at least explain some of the behaviour. But again, the whole point of the book was, how can we make ourselves more punctual? A lot of us don't show this behaviour. A lot of this is concealed because we have tricks to make us on time. And that was my original motivation for writing the book, was sharing people's tricks, because we have to trick our brains into allowing us. I've just been at the previous discussion about neurodiversity, where people are saying, my brain won't allow me to do something. Well, our brain, for some reason, won't allow us to be early for a regular appointment, but there are ways we can possibly trick ourselves. So that external deadline is very important. Even if you're doing a piece of work and if somebody says to us, doesn't matter what time you know, this isn't important, don't worry about this, do this in your own time. Well, it won't get done, because if there isn't a deadline, there'll always be something else more important. So even if you have to say, well, I'll do a draft and I'll send it to you by next Tuesday, you are creating that as an external deadline. So it's so valuable. Involve other people to make your deadline real and external. Giving somebody a lift to a regular event is a great way of getting there early. We like to be early. We like to be early. We just can't do it. Because you will build in a margin for lateness. You will be slightly late for picking them up, but you will be in time because you'll have built in enough time to be early. any sort of pre-event activity you can put in. You know, if you're going to go to see a show or meet your friends beforehand, you'll be a little late for meeting them, but you won't miss the show. Set your deadlines while you're calm. If you're about to leave for the airport and you've got to decide how long it'll take you to pack your case, lock the house, and when the taxi should arrive, you will be very unrealistic. Arrange the taxi the day before when you are very well aware that you need an hour to make sure the house is safe. If you need to, book a hotel the night before or a taxi. If you're going to a wedding or need to get to the airport, just make sure that your actual deadline is not the time that the check-in closes, because then you've missed the whole event. The lizard's tail, I don't know if it makes sense, but a lizard can drop off a tail and grow a new one. If you can add something that you don't actually have to do and you can drop it off, that can help you to be on time. So you allow yourself time to buy a coffee or post a letter, and then you find you haven't got time. Better not to do it to stop for fuel, but anyway, there are things you can do there. And we know we're going to be putting off, we know we will postpone things, including going to bed. So get ready the night before. Postpone going to bed by getting everything ready for the morning, because if you're trying to pack your bag when you're stressed and in a hurry, you won't be able to think clearly. So that's being a time bender. What about the people who live with us, or what about the people we live with? Because there are scales of time bending, and there are scales of who's later than whom, if you see what I mean. And it can be a great source of conflict in relationships. So simple, and as a result of what we've been saying, really, always give a deadline with consequences. Never tell us something's not urgent if you actually want us to do it. Don't give an inch. If you told us a deadline and we aren't ready, I hate to say this, but you should leave without us, because we have to take that deadline seriously. And if you say, oh, never mind, then, or if it doesn't really, anyway, make it real. Make it real is the trick to it. Number 3, try not to get mad, because if you actually lose your temper every time we are late for you because you take it personally, then that becomes our trigger for knowing how late we are, and that is really not good for either of us. So find other ways to show us time is up. Now you might say, well, what? Well, my husband plays the bass guitar, and because he's read my book, when he's ready, he'll start practicing. That's a great way of me knowing that he's sitting there waiting for me and I better get a move on. You might, I don't know, maybe setting the alarm on the house. There may be other things you can do that are just a trigger. Maybe just put the radio on loudly. Right, people very, very often, Jay is here, very often will say, oh, we lie about the starting time. Well, yes, that will work, but not over the long term, because our deadlines have to be real. If we expect you to be factoring in a delay, we will take it as given, and we will end up being later than before. So we have to trigger that adrenaline by making it a real deadline. So just a warning about that trick. So number 5, don't bottle it up. Show us how you feel, because it's the fear and guilt that trigger our adrenaline, which is what gets us rushing about. If we know you're upset, we should be bringing you higher up our acceptable scale of lateness. Maybe if you actually give us evidence, because we are in denial, give us evidence of how many times we were late, we will take you more seriously. Please don't take it personally. You're very important to us to get out that door. People who live on their own have a lot more trouble than people who've got somebody shouting at them. And I guess we have to recognize our behavior is extremely inconsiderate, but we don't mean it to be. And on the positive side, we know that it's a nightmare, but there are some benefits, because this is the whole idea of it's a personality type. We can be adaptable, flexible, we can drop what we're doing if you need our help. If time's short, we can move really fast, and we are good in a crisis. So if those are different characteristics to yours, maybe there is a little bit of pale for all this terrible behavior you put up with. And then just another one about being friends with the time bender. Make your own travel arrangements. Never rely on them to get you somewhere. Keep your own tickets. If you've got to wait, see if you can have something that keeps you busy these days with the smartphone. That's not hard, but try not to get resentful while you're waiting. Call when you begin to worry, because we need to know that we are late. Tell us how you feel, or we won't really think about your upset. Try not to take it personally. We're trying to control a compulsive behaviour. We don't think our time is more important than yours. It's just that you are very good at leaving the house early and we are not. We find it as difficult to leave the house early as you do if you had to be late. And even if it might ruin your friendship, leave without us if we're really bugging you, because it's worth the risk. So I think we're going to finish in time. So the takeaway is, in terms of emotional intelligence, we need each other because we are born that way. Our attitudes are woven into our personality, and we have other characteristics. So if you're a timekeeper, you're reliable, efficient, and task focused. And we've looked at the time benders being adaptable. So the intention is that if you understand why we're late, whether it's for yourself or for other people or for people you are coaching or managing, then hopefully that can help reduce the negative emotions and perhaps even improve the punctuality. And I love that quote from Marilyn Monroe. And I'll leave you just with telling you that this book appears to be in a unique space, to my surprise. And it appears to cover subjects that are not typically covered by time management courses, because they tend to be run by people who are good at being on time and, typically the J's, who finish the courses, write the books, don't waste the time and get on with things. And it does seem to help some people understand what's going on, because people who are late don't want to be late, and they do look for ways to try and improve this. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions?
Could you reshape Marilyn's quote, please, is the question from Majula.
Oh, could I restate it? Oh, yes. Hold on. The quote is, "I've been on a calendar, but I've never been on time." Marilyn Monroe. And I believe she was on a nude calendar in her early years, so she definitely meant that. But yes.
Brilliant. Any in the last couple of minutes, any final questions? No?
Any insights or takeaways? Sorry.
Oh.
Okay, thanks, Elizabeth. Great session. Really enjoyed it from Elizabeth. I think my closing reflections are then, as a time bender myself, it was really interesting to hear this. So thanks very much, Teresa. I absolutely hate being late, but I am always late, or typically late. But I actually always see myself as pretty efficient and get lots of things done. And very optimistic about time. So, Teresa, what you've had to say today about time bending, and I love that concept of time bending. It really is an eye opener, and I go away inspired by your session, thinking about how I might try harder in the future. So, thank you very much, and thanks to all of our attendees today. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Teresa. I'm going to stop recording now.
Thank you.